hello. Welcome, Gene Hoffman. Appreciate you taking time to come and chat with us in the Tang Con. Obviously, you've seen some of the degeneracy on the timeline, but we've got a lot of stuff we'd love to chat about. And so appreciate you taking the time to come out today and hang out with us.
Hey, look, man, thanks for having me and thanks for all the craziness and good stuff you guys do.
We got to find something to pass the time, right? So you know
Mhm.
as well as anyone, good stuff is worth the wait. I saw some news recently. It looked like CoinDesk had come out and talked about some good progress for the Chia network moving towards an IPO. I didn't know if maybe you'd like to give us a little heads up on some of that because it's kind of breaking news here.
Yeah, well, so most people know that last year we filed our first S1 confidentially, and we would have filed again probably end of last year, but Credit Suisse's investment bank went kablooey. So those were who we were working with, so we had to scramble a little bit and pull back together the team, and we're really excited that we got filed at the end of March, and was just checking the CoinDesk guys at the Brown Redneck conference. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. I saw a little bit about the conference. I'm sure I could probably guess one, maybe two of the three, dApps that you were referring to as far as the front end, back end things going on there at that speech. And I just wanted to give some people some context. So Gene is currently the acting CEO at Chia Network Incorporated, and a lot of folks who are new to crypto or newer to crypto have a tough time reconciling the concept that there's a public ledger called the Chia blockchain, and then there's the currently private company looking to go public, which is Chia Network Incorporated. But for anyone who's kind of hitting the books and learning more about blockchain, there's a giant difference between the two, and the permissionless, censorship-resistant nature of blockchain technology is what you get on the Chia blockchain public ledger. They just happen to have, a private corporation that's able to come together and do development, and to the community, it looks like maybe they don't do marketing. And I think the Tang Gang has found a little bit of an opportunity to lean in with Chia because who needs to spend money on making memes? I mean, Elon Musk even says it's the best form of marketing.
Totally. Look, authentic marketing matters more. I think one of the best ways to think about it is, CNI, Chia Network Inc., is as to Red Hat as Linux is to the Chia blockchain, right? And so, we wrote it, we started it off, but now it's something we do not control. Obviously, Bram has influence, but even there, if he wants to do something that the vast majority or even the majority of farmers and others don't want to do, it's not going to happen.
Right.
Some people missed it, actually. He wanted to add some more fees to stop spamming, and basically it was DOA and withdrawn. It was quite funny. The whole community was like, nah.
Yeah, I love that. And especially because a lot of the, kind of retail user experience right now in crypto tends to be on the EVMs with ETH and all these forks. Alameda Research has their Solana chain or whatever. And there's always this issue of it's so cost efficient, and you end up with people spamming the network. And even the ordinals boys over there at Bitcoin are having that issue where they're kind of pushing the fees onto the rest of the users of the chain. And today someone made the classic, I can't even buy my coffee with Bitcoin today because of $100 transaction fee.
Right.
And they've got the large block space taken up. And so it is interesting to see, the easy answer is we'll just jack up the fees, and then that'll deter people from you. And the community is like, hey, Brad, no, we want these cheap NFTs, man.
Well, especially at start, right? Because people were like, look, there isn't yet, a lot of demand. And this was 2+ years ago. Now there is actually real demand. We saw it in the inscriptions phase where we were full. Now it's really funny. People are always like, are we going to crash? And it's like, nobody noticed that it was full. People just needed to add a fee. Now fees there were like a penny, but look, I said it the other day, if you optimize your blockchain for cheap or free, you're optimizing for DDoS and spam. And ultimately, long term, we kind of expect a $10 fee to be the usual fee to get access to the Chia blockchain block. Yeah. But, the problem people have imagining that is that Bitcoin, because of Bitcoin script, and Ethereum, because of EVM, both of them really can't do good layer twos. EVM has that kind of monolithic account model, and it's like, you have to move the entire smart contract to an L2. That doesn't really move as easily or cleanly as like in Chia. You want to move an NFT coin to an L2. Only you, as the coin owner of that NFT, can move to that L2 and do whatever the heck you want.
I've even gone a little further thinking about just the design feature of the transactions on Chia. Okay, right. So in the MEV world, EVM, you flip the letters around, you've got MEV. And in the validation of these signing and transactions in the blocks, people are ordering the transactions to maximize not just the fees that they stand to make as a validator, but the opportunity to gain the market on the
Take the
buys and
alpha.
sells of exactly to take
Right.
the alpha out of the liquidity and out of the transactions in the marketplace. And for people that don't know, Chia resolves all of the transactions in the block simultaneously.
That's right. So
When
that
you get
takes
that, it's like a non-starter for EVMs.
right, and that takes 80% of the MEV out. Now, there's still
Just
always going
that.
to be some MEV, right?
Right.
The miner's always, the farmer's always going to have opportunities to go, hey, that looks like a good deal. Now, the thing is, in our world, though, MEV usually means more liquidity is being brought. Because basically, you got a farmer looking at a transaction going, well, I'll put my capital up because I like that
Right.
transaction. So ultimately, it kind of is a positive, even though it might be bad for you, the guy who thought you got a good deal, but it got sniped.
Sure. Right.
Now, again, Bitcoin script, Ethereum, Chia Lisp allows you to do a lot more where you can make it so that, people can't figure out how to unwind your offer. And therefore the offer has to go through and it goes through in parallel and people can't play with the price of the oracle, all these things. Right. So it's really just quite different. And, people are complaining about Lightning today because of course it costs like $50 to open a Lightning channel.
Right.
Well, that's like Lightning version 1. And in the academic world, we're at like version 4. But all of those other versions and those enhancements all can't happen because Bitcoin hasn't done things like OpCTV, things like OpCat. And until they do those or go to Bitcoin Lisp, which, Anthony Towns is seriously promoting in Bitcoin Core, they're not going to have the kind of Lightning experience that you could have. And, what's cool is what Bram's doing with peer-to-peer gaming is to build a payment channel that is that rich, that is that easy to open and play poker or Wordle for money directly peer to peer with no rake, but you're in a payment channel, right? And so so that's the problem in some ways is it's hard to imagine how good these things can be because there aren't a lot of good equivalents right now.
Right. And it speaks to getting the first things right in order to maximize the outcome on the back end, right? And if you start your rocket off to a tilt, it doesn't matter how much fuel you got in that thing, you're off course from the second you lift off. And I think Chia has really done the diligence to make sure that it can build sequentially in order.
Well, look, we had like 10 years of experience of Bitcoin, a few years of experience with Ethereum, and a few years to sit down and do real R&D. It was literally invent new math here. It was, okay, if you're going to have a smart contracting environment, the Bitcoin style, and you're free to do whatever you want to do, what would that look like? And, with those things, I hear people talk about, well, we'll start undecentralized to decentralized later. And it's like, I have yet to see that ever occur. I can see people locking themselves out of their smart contracts, but that's not exactly what we're all talking about. We're talking about, launching a network that is inherently decentralized and then, knowing what you have to do to be able to let people upgrade when something breaks because, we had Cat 1, we had to go to Cat 2, but we knew exactly what that path would look like and always do. Like upgradability is the way we kind of see how things work, but the upgrade is up to the user, not up to us, not up to a centralized smart contract.
The decentralization maximum is fun in theory, but when something breaks, if you're not a Chad dev, it's nice to have some folks that know what the heck is going on be able to guide and provide that information to the end user. And I think that's where the cypherpunk ethos is complemented by that traditional business model because there aren't enough people that are in expertise in the field to be able to navigate the challenges. And so for now, there is actually the ability to have counsel with the experts, and you don't want those people to have to do it all out of charity because even their time is difficult to afford, and that's why we're so grateful as the Tang Gang to have you in here.
Well, and look, this goes the other way too, right? If you're a large organization and it's your day job to move $50 million a minute, you want to be paying somebody so that if something goes wrong, they're incented to get on the phone and solve it right the heck now.
Right.
And I just don't see a bank calling a Solana developer.
No, I don't either. And they're probably not going to hop in the Twitter space to talk about it. So that's where I think Larry Fink recently was talking about he foresees a tokenized everything economy, right? And so you can probably start that conversation with, that's a lot of money, so I'm going to need it to be secure. I can't just throw this on any given blockchain. And so maybe Bitcoin is the old dog that has the Pico security narrative going for it. Oh, look at the hash rate. It's so secure. But we can talk about the bottlenecks in throughput and in their, just the coding language itself has some inability to be compatible with that idea of tokenized everything economy.
That's right.
And so
Bitcoin is
get the trilemma a little bit, it's kind of like Chia chose security, then decentralization, and the scalability, you guys actually have some novel ways of going about that that I haven't seen on any other chain. They're all talking L2, and Bram speaks about the federated database of the data layer. And I think about how that introduces a totally different concept to being able to scale not just the blockchain itself, but some of the other bottlenecks we have in the industry. Third Web, which is kind of a premier EVM easy contract deployer, they used to do everything for free, right?
Right.
And now they're reading that storage kind of bottleneck where they're saying this is a lot of content to have to host, and IPFS will only give you so much, Mega will only give you so much. And so it speaks to this kind of sleeping giant that I haven't heard anyone else in the industry other than the Chia leadership speak to, which is where is it going to be stored and who's going to serve it? Because AWS is not decentralized.
No. Well, so look, there's an old story here called Mojo Nation, right? And so, the founder of Zcash and Bram were co-workers at Mojo Nation, and Mojo Nation tried to build a cryptocurrency, a Filecoin, and equivalent to a Bitcoin all at once. Yeah. And a lot of, in fact, of what our kind of key breakthroughs Bitcoin had were direct learnings from how Mojo Nation failed. So things like test nets and, not trying to boil the ocean. And, Bram and I both kind of have the view that storage is much more of an institutional problem than it is a technology problem. And so, when you make it easy for multiple people to mirror stuff, all of a sudden now, and by the way, and you have, a Merkle root, a, hash of all of that stuff. So people can honestly go, hey, I downloaded it from a rando, but I know for sure it's exactly what I expected.
Graphically true. Yep.
Right. BitTorrent style, right? And in fact, BitTorrent kind of fits into this in the sense that, hey, as long as you've got an audience that wants to publish that, then you can have multiple sources of it. So, having AWS be one of them isn't so scary if, the artist has it and, a bunch of the fans have it and it's always kind of persisting. The final storage will rot, but that's why you want to have that kind of flexibility that, oh, hey, what is it? One of the major NFT places is now starting to charge. Is your NFT project going to pay for it or not? And, our NFT standard, our view of the world was that happens. And so if you own an NFT, gee, wouldn't it be nice if you could add the payload to a place where you host it as well as all the public places? So, we feel that like decentralized storage is really hard. It has adverse selection problems and CSAM problems. And that's something you kind of try to solve a different way. And in fact, what I was kind of talking about the front ends and DeFi, it's like, as say even the bridge that's about to launch in Chia, there's no reason an end user can't download the bridge's interface effectively and run it locally. The individual validators still have to be running it locally as well, but there's no actual central service in that sense, right?
That's one of the things I love about Chia is it has helped me take a much less maximalist approach to crypto because it serves as a kind of like a mothership almost, where any chain may end up with a bridge to Chia. And if you're talking big money, I mean, you're talking serious institutional levels of money, you want it to be secure. You can't have it on some central archaic smart contract. That's just a non-starter. Yep. So to be able to take some of those fun, maybe degen, experimental programming environment stuff from the EVM and be able to bridge to Chia, it kind of gives you the best of both worlds if you're from the outside looking in. And then as far as Chia goes, it's a natural progression of scalability. Yeah. People are going to come from their own, corner of the universe and have different needs and wants in the industry. And there's a lot of ways to just kind of interrope through data layer and then to drill down to the blocks. And so that doesn't have as nearly a threatening implication of MEV or these transaction fees that are a barrier to development, because you can sort of work up in the high grounds and then drill down when you actually need that hash on chain. And I think that's just such an interesting novel implementation.
Yeah. And look, a little, leap beyond what you just said is, if you think about what's coming from a custody perspective, personalized vaults with hardware that you can customize to, recover itself, make it work like a Gmail account instead of what you're currently doing, passkeys as well. All of a sudden, issuing your asset on Chia and bridging it out into those other places and other markets becomes very interesting, actually, because you have such a stronger base with both custody in the vault and the overall decentralization and, inevitability, if you will, that the Chia blockchain will keep running. I mean, we peaked at 400,000 full nodes. There's still about 90,000 full nodes out there. These days, I think there's about 3 farmers per full node if you kind of did the math. So it's still like 250,000 farmers out there. And, even if CNI were to go bankrupt, it'd suck. People would hate it, but the network's going to run on no matter what.
And we're seeing more and more community deployments. I mean, the Circuit DAO folks, I know the farmers, even the Gigahorse, all of those guys are constantly in competition. Yep. So there's no shortage of community development commits going on. But it does speak to, there's the comfort of having CNI, but I don't think the real Chia community, they're not beholden to you guys.
Right. You don't need us. I mean, like, you're going to need us to show people what you can do that you haven't imagined yet, mm-hmm. and to put a little UX to it. But the whole point of that in open source is then go, like, build the stuff that Bram and I can't imagine.
It's fun. I mean, the community devs are pushing so hard. We've got Drac launched his Tang Talk Wireless, right? The Team Dracadist. And so they're on Pulse Chain and they're on Chia, but we're hosted on Data Layer. My personal NFT collection that I launched on Pulp Chain is on Data Layer hosted, and we're trying to teach people. We were fortunate enough to speak with Dylan and do a little evergreen miner batch rollout for the community. And those things are helping people kind of realize owning the blockchain from a contribution standpoint. The thing works if everyone is contributing to the consensus. That's the peer-to-peer network that you're looking for. And it doesn't matter what flavor or brand. Once you're into crypto, you start to let that stuff fall to the wayside and build things that are actually useful. Let's get to the tokenized everything economy.
Yeah, and what's so amazing about it is, as long as you have one person running a Time Lord somewhere and one farmer, and those two people can be the same person, blockchain persists. Now, we're never going to see that. It would be a nuclear Armageddon to get back there. And even there, we're on all 7 continents.
It's crazy. That alone is kind of a piece, an olive branch of peace around the world.
That's right. Look, 640 farmers using Starlink, right? And so, like, we don't even know for sure, but some of them are McMurdo, right? And, it's just this wholly different view, and it's much more Bitcoin. I mean, it is there is a large, somewhat faceless from everywhere. I mean, look, China outnumbers everybody in total farm, maybe even in total space. But, it's followed quickly by the US, Germany, Russia, Iran. I mean, it's literally a global thing. And so from that perspective, it really is everybody's blockchain.
And if you're able to speak to it, what challenges do you face trying to bring this technology to a little bit of a laggard? At least in the US, the government's a little bit behind how useful this technology could be, it seems. And surely they're concerned with, national security, international commerce, and there's got to be discussions. I know World Bank has chosen to utilize the Chia data layer for the Climate Action Data Trust. So there's obviously merits of the technology, but what are some of the considerations that have to be done with, is there any influence or pressure that the company feels from regulatory agencies to say, if you're going to be rolling out this hyper efficient, low cost commodity blockchain, we're a little concerned because all of a sudden you're kind of pulling the veil back on who's in control here, and it might be the people.
Well, so we're an interesting challenge for some of the folks who are anti-blockchain in the Capitol Hill. If you read the Biden, 200-page document out blockchains that came out about 18 months ago, the very end, they're like, but it might have some value in climate. And that was us. Right. Yeah. And so, and in fact, if you think about it politically, the overlap is almost horribly tangential. It's like the people who seem to hate the blockchain the most are the ones who would most like to see a truly decentralized voluntary carbon market trade 24/7, 365.
Right.
I think the real battle is going to be over DeFi. And in fact, I think it's kind of what I was talking about at the Brown Redneck conference. But we've seen this before. One of the things we started with is Paley, who some of you see on Twitter. He was obviously one of the reasons I was at the conference. His view was like, look, tell the PGP story, right? And the PGP story is that myself and 2 other guys at PGP figured out that the way to end export controls and cryptography was to print it in a book and export it. And, at the end of the day, if whatever we're talking about can be printed in a book or filed as a PDF on a federal judge's docket, it's speech.
Yep.
And speech is strongly protected in the United States. And in fact, a lot of the conventional wisdom, or even people who think they know the First Amendment, has been overturned by the current court. The court has, if anything, gotten even more speech protective. So things like commercial speech, IMS versus Sorrel Health, IMS Health versus Sorrel, pardon me. Or no, it's Sorrel versus IMS Health. Anyway, you'll Google those. You'll find what I'm talking about.
You bet.
Basically, it was a commercial speech restriction on pharmacies and the pharmaceuticals companies. And the Supreme Court said, it's speech. It's subject to strict scrutiny, and this comes nowhere near strict scrutiny. So, even on these front ends, if these front ends are truly just views to otherwise a decentralized flow, like in Chia, of offers on Swarm or off the mempool, that's pure speech, even if you're charging for it. Because obviously the pharmaceutical companies were charging for the speech in question there, right? So I think that's where the real battle lies. In fact, it's kind of interesting. Like I like to explain to people, the SEC is a three-headed beast. There's the 33 Act side of the SEC, which is the part that like companies going public or already public companies deal with day in and day out.
Right.
And their mission is very much helping companies create capital. Like, it's if you do it right, we're here to help you get it done right. There's the other side, which is the 40 Act side. So these are the guys who, manage the exchanges, mutual funds like Fidelity, brokers and broker dealers. They're very scared of this technology because, frankly, if done right, may make them pretty much irrelevant.
A lot less middlemen involved.
That's right. You don't have exchanges in Chia. You have one market that has views of that market set, but any communications channel is an exchange in Chia, carrier pigeon. And so they're both freaked out about this and very worried about, frankly, being put out of a job.
Yep.
And then there's enforcement that sits in between. And so, the SEC has a very kind of three-headed beast view of everything. I can tell you with our interactions that, even all three of them have kind of looked at what we did and said, well, as long as we understand what you're saying correctly, then, oh, wow, you actually did, what the 2019 guidance says to do, and that you are sufficiently decentralized, or whatever term you want to use.
Right.
And that fits with like the FIT Act. There are a lot of blockchain projects who don't like the FIT Act because they violate some of its decentralization tenets. Well, we really like the FIT Act because if we aren't fully and totally decentralized from the FIT Act's point of view, it's simply because we haven't, the blockchain hasn't emitted enough tokens just yet, and that'll fix itself on its own, right?
Yep.
So, so the other side of the U.S. government is, the World Bank is a State Department arm. And so right now, the federal government and the executive branch pretty much considers the Chia blockchain the first thing to look at when they think they have a blockchain problem. Now, to answer your earlier question, though, Sam Bankman-Fried, Terra Luna, Celsius, this put us back 2 quarters easily, maybe 3. Because, we've gone deep with top 5 commercial banks and completed POCs, and we don't talk about those things publicly other than kind of generically unless they're going to become paying, production environments. We talk about the World Bank and the IFC because they're actually spending real other people's money day to day on a public blockchain. But, the champions we have at those large organizations weren't really interested in putting their head on the chopping block while Sam Bankman-Fried was being convicted of fraud.
Horrible optics.
Correct. Now, what's good is that with the ETFs launching for Bitcoin, that has changed the tone and the caliber of the conversation. With BlackRock out making money on cryptocurrency, all of a sudden a commercial bank looks at that and goes, okay, maybe it is time to roll out those projects, because the fundamental battle for Chia and getting the real world using a blockchain is the failures of Ethereum. So a whole host of folks, JP Morgan Chase, you name it, had looked at Ethereum and went, okay, this is the future, but this set of technologies I can't trust in a public blockchain. They look at the North Koreans stealing $1 billion a year, and you do not want to be the CIO of a major American bank who loses $100 million this morning and has to go tell the CEO that you lost $100 million of bank money. Other people's money is very different than your own in the casino. And so what we see is that JP Morgan Chase has a nice private copy of Ethereum, and they do some stuff, but intranet lost to the internet, and that's exactly the same thing that's going to happen here. So a lot of what we do is both getting customers comfortable that we really do solve the problems, that it's not proof of vitalik. I mean, they're very much onto this. It's not going to use the power that Bitcoin will have to use if you scale it up 100x, because it's not Bitcoin today. That's the word, right? It's Bitcoin in 10 years if it was the only financial rails.
Right.
We have a much more credible conversation where it's like, no, what's going to happen is we're going to find all the, stranded storage at every major provider and everybody on their phone and their laptop too. That's a very different kind of resource profile.
Extremely low barrier to entry. It's something where the competitive, because I try to have a better appreciation for the global status of the blockchain, and it's easy to say, oh, we'll spin up a Solana validator. That thing's expensive as heck, man. That doesn't. Maybe
At
if you live
least
in the US
12,000 a year.
somewhere, that made a
Right,
ton of
right.
sense.
It's like it's
But
at least like 12 grand a year, and that's
yeah,
before you get like the millions of dollars you got to borrow from the Solana Foundation to make it work. And I'm
right.
sitting there going, how does that dude in Kenya ever pull that off? But
Never
he
gonna
can
happen.
find used throwaway hardware that will
Yep.
actually farm chia.
That was one of the first things I learned in our economic studies and stuff. It's satisfying that virtually unlimited demand with resources that have alternative uses.
Right.
And when you use a commodity like a hard drive, that you could stop farming chia tonight and be storing pictures of your family tomorrow, that's the alternative use case where all of a sudden this mass produced commodity, it's circulated on every continent, that everyone's got to have storage, and now it becomes the key to driving the Nakamoto consensus. It's just, I mean, that sauce is delicious. So that's one of the things where I think it's easy for us to get caught up in our casino addiction in the EVM world, and we think from maybe a little industrialized centric view, and we forget the world's a big place and everyone deserves access to a permissionless, censorship resistant speech technology. And that's the key, I think, that Chia has. It's the sleeping giant of, you want to talk barrier to entry, it doesn't get lower than that.
That's right. It is anybody with, even basic internet access. And when I say basic, I mean, like, I believe you could probably farm on a 56K modem, especially if you used like one of the Flex Farmer kind of solutions.
Right.
Right. But I mean, anybody who's got any sort of connectivity at all, even any sort of 3G plus, you absolutely can farm.
Yeah.
And that's just a huge change, right? And that's, it's even lighter if you're just using the wallet and trying to do, commerce, right? But we intentionally kind of took that view because you don't want to have the centralization effect of expensive storage or expensive hardware, right?
Yeah.
And it's been fun watching some farmers because, obviously with the halving, there's more economic pressure on our farmers than there was before.
Right.
And all of a sudden they're realizing that if they shut their farms down, they can sell it for like 80% of what they bought it for.
That doesn't suck.
And all of a sudden their profitability calculations were wrong before they looked at it. And now they're sitting there going, wait, unlike GPUs and ASICs and other chains that are basically worthless when you're done with them.
Right.
Storage is storage.
Yep.
After 5 years, it might go down in value some, but there's probably a chia farmer who will take that old drive.
And heaven forbid things continue to flesh out on the data layer. I mean, you start to look at, well, I stopped farming a little bit, but I had this opportunity to host and serve the data to this community that absolutely needed these databases, and I'm making a little coin there doing it that way. So the competition ramps up and the opportunities expand. I don't see that in other places. It's novel. Maybe I just haven't done enough research, but I'm perpetually online, Gene.
Yeah, you and I both, man.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to, I don't want to take all your time, so I appreciate everything that you've covered with us. I did want to touch on just the Tang Gang and how the Tang Gang on Chia, chain agnostic, crypto, very enthusiastic crypto community. And I've even seen a little bit of the push into DeFi. It's going to become a hot topic. Right now, it's kind of the fun, flashy casino, but there's going to be some strict conversations coming down the pipe. Where do you kind of stand with regard to the technologies that we call DeFi today? It's kind of X times Y equals K, pump and dump on my friend. Whereas the DeFi of tomorrow probably looks like reducing the collateral necessary to actually be able to service large sums of money trustlessly moving around the world.
Yes.
What is kind of the path from here to there, in your opinion? Are we always going to have the casino burring and doing its little projects, or does the world start to look a little bit more like it did pre-blockchain with your stock market and your exchanges, but now it's happening on this blockchain and your assets are just tokens?
So look, I think it's going to have some transition time, because even as you start to get, more real world assets, it takes time. It takes a different level of time. People are used to, I created my meme coin this morning and I've got it pumped to, $10 million this afternoon.
Oh yeah.
I can tell you that, people who spent $100 million of money planting trees in the Amazon 4 years ago need a little more time to think about what they put their carbon on and why and how and all of that. But I think it is also a very quick moving set of dominoes, because as you start to see more of these real assets, you start to see all of the benefits. And a lot of those benefits are things like 24/7 trading, one market. All of a sudden, if there's not 1,000 people in the United States who want to buy carbon offsets. Well, there might be 1,000. There might also be 1,000 in Brazil. And there might also be 1,000 in France. There might be 1,000 in Singapore, or maybe it's only 500 in Singapore, but it's 1,000 in Hong Kong. All of a sudden, that's a real market. And it's 24/7, 365 market. And once that thing catches fire, you've got kind of the liquidity and depth that comes in. The opportunities to make markets on the Chia blockchain directly and natively is going to get very rich. And, the idea that any asset you're selling on the Chia blockchain, you're going to offer it for Tether and USDC and XCH. And, depending on how quick your market moves, it might be for 5 minutes. If you got a slow moving market, it might be for 5 hours. Mm-hmm. But the whole point is that then market makers can kind of look at that world and go, wait, there's an arbitrage opportunity where I can actually add liquidity to this market and narrow the spread. And, when you start doing that, the other things that pop up are you can do things like full derivatives on both equities and commodities, totally automated in American style options. And it's not even a service. It's literally just some Chia list that knows how to handle that conversation, right? And all of a sudden, as an asset issuer, you walk into a market where the only challenge you have is making people aware of your asset.
Right.
And if you come in already with some awareness, some brand, right, you're going to have the ability to immediately have deep, rich markets that aren't constrained by national barriers and that trade without counterparties or escrow. Most people don't know, but the stock market in the United States is still T+2. I don't know what day it's going to become T+1, but the day is about, a few weeks from now, right? Mm-hmm. What that means is when you trade, it's still another day before it settles. Right. And in fact, when you buy coffee at Starbucks doesn't get your money for 24 hours. They get it literally the next business day. And in Chia and others, when you settle an offers securities trade, you're done in under 5 minutes. If you want to be really, really conservative, it takes 10 minutes.
Sure. For the confirmations.
Right. And it's a settlement machine. And all of a sudden now you're talking about settling equities. You're talking about settling debt. You're talking about settling carbon offset. You're also talking about settling expensive whiskey, expensive bikes,
right?
A luxury handbag. When you look around the world and talk about, there are some things that have title, right? So like boats, have thousands of years of how you title a boat. Cars, titled. Motorcycles, titled. Bikes, not really. And, quickly you get in these worlds where there's real need for provenance and title and ownership. And, you start thinking about things like selling a used car in the future may very well be that you do a offer with somebody right there in front of you. And, you no longer can be stolen from. I mean, there's a wrench attack barely there because, you haven't signed it. Right. And so all of a sudden you start talking about being able to do a title transfer and, now you own the car, whether you've got possession of it or not. Right. That's a huge step in the right direction when you're talking about doing things like, eBay style transactions or person to person trades. But imagine where that market is all of those things. And so, what you're doing as an end user is like going to Dexy and saying, hey, give me the carbon view or, hey, give me the meme coin view. Right. And I can add the things I'm interested in. And oh, by the way, I don't really have to use Dexy if I don't want to. I use Swarm and I've got a local thing that lets me subscribe to the different pairs that I want to see. And I just watch that market. My bot or me trades in it, and where we want to get is, you're buying a car, but you don't have any USD, but you got a whole bunch of, let's see what's up these days. Well, I guess NVIDIA stock has fallen a bit, but you got a bunch of NVIDIA and you're way up in it. You want your robot in your phone to go, okay, I need to get this much USDC to match this offer. I'm going to do that trade immediately and maybe even settle it all together where literally like you're stitching together the, NVIDIA for USDC that then settles the offer that you're sitting in front of, and all of that goes through in parallel together, locked together in the next block.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible. That is going to take our viewers a couple Twitter spaces of me talking about it, but no, that's really cool stuff.
I think people got to touch it, right? And the good news is we're talking about, the bridge is up in, at worst case, late May. Once you get back to a world where you can start seeing what, wrapped USDC pairs to all of the meme coins are on Chia, and Chia itself, I think it really starts to get people that view of, oh, wait, this is how it can work. And, today, if you download the Chia Lite wallet, the offer builder is kind of one-to-one. And one of the things you can see us do is make it be that if you're offering something, we're going to prompt you and say, hey, you should also offer it in these other stables or these other, highly liquid other coins. And we'll do the work of giving you, quickly, what's the price, how much Chia is $40 today. Right. But the idea is to say, hey, look, just generate all of those and broadcast all of those. And so now you don't care if somebody's got Tether but they want to buy your thing. Now,
Right.
you may decide you don't want to use Tether. You're a carbon
Mhm.
project, and you're like, yeah, it's scary. You're just going to set that as a preference, and then every time Offer Builder is going to prompt you, it's going to have everything but Tether.
Right. That's one of the things that our community tries to do is understand quality liquidity, highly liquid quality assets, right? And so having USDC and Tether and things like that, and it even gets back to the custody. Where am I going to keep the bag, right? So you make all your meme coin casino money, and now maybe you've got DAI or you've got USDC or you've got Tether, but are you going to keep it on that chain where someone just hacked for a million or $1 billion? It seems like there's a better place to even keep the stable coins. And
Right.
that probably pulls a lot of attention and liquidity into whatever that market is that has those custody features.
Yeah, look, Jeremy Lair at Circle and I go way back. He and I were both partnered at our previous companies and did a lot of business together. Their big view about which chains to be native on are generally driven by the types of bridges we're just about to see launched in the community.
Nice.
And so to the extent a lot of USDC gets locked up there, that is a risk. Now, that's the reason we're putting it on Base is I want that risk on Coinbase and
Sure.
not just on Ethereum, right? That's
Yeah.
scary. It's like if you're going to do something centralized, go with
Might
the
as
big
well
centralized
take some
entity.
quality.
Right. But
Yeah.
once USDC is native on Chia, it's one of the better possible options. Now, you still inherit all of the FDIC risk. I mean, Senator Warren went after all of the crypto banks and ended up getting all the banks. And, we've watched USDC depeg, and correctly so. Like, it's amazing how the market knew exactly how much cash was at Silicon Valley Bank, right? So one of the things with Circle is that, it's great. And I'll say it this way, most of the commercial customers are fine with it because they've got bank risk anyway, right? Like, if you're a bank, you have bank risk, right? It's like, my counterparty's whole. Anyway, but, things like CircuitDAO, where you're talking about an over-collateralized stable coin, right, and BYC, that becomes an interesting way for you to be able to say, hey, look, I don't really want to sell Chia. As long as I over-collateralize enough, I'm not going to be forced to. I'm going to spend some money to borrow, but I might do that to pay this month's electrical bill and not have to pay it, until next year, effectively.
Does CircuitDAO service? Do you think that could be a solution even at the institutional level, or is it a little lower? Or where is the comfort level kind of currently in the industry?
So I think on longer term it can be. I think right now the idea of Circle's nearly public and Coinbase is public makes it just that much easier for both banks and these other kind of institutional customers. They're fine with that, right?
Right.
Now longer term, I think it's different, and I will certainly say on the personal side of the world, you're going to have this option to really have the ability to move pretty quickly between things. I mean, one of the neat things about the DEX model we have is, you can imagine that like folks like Endertown are going to have a Tether to BYC to USDT bot, and they're going to charge you a little bit on every one of those, but they're going to keep posting offers, and it's just making sure they have liquidity on the 3 pair, right? And so all of a sudden, as an end user, within a minute you can go from BYC to USDC. Okay. But at the same time, I think for long-term savings, there's real value in having the native currency of the blockchain, right?
Yeah.
It really is the thing you can always use to buy access to blocks and to use and, actually implement, if you want to make an NFT, you need real Chia, right? Yeah. So, so from that perspective,
Chia can't pay the fees on the Bitcoin network, right? And Bitcoin can't pay the fees on the Ethereum network. These things have uses, and it doesn't have to be a only one chain prospers kind of world.
Well, look, if Bitcoin does adopt Bitcoin Lisp, it will unfortunately be a bit more limited than what Chia Lisp is because Bram being Bram, he looked at the UTXO model and made it simpler like geniuses do, and it's therefore more powerful. But all of a sudden, you could see a situation where BTC could be used as a rate-paying tool on Chia and vice versa. Yeah, there's really neat kind of capabilities there. And look, longer term, one of the things is that using cats to pay farmers for fees is not out of the question.
Yeah. And it speaks to, we were talking a little bit, maybe the institutions of the exchanges and the market makers would be a little less interested in a world where you're able to tear down the need to have so much hands-on help. But we're kind of describing services that backdoor right into those same expertise where there's a need for this highly liquid but simple access to these different quality assets. It might be a currently different business model than what they're doing in the exchange, but who better understands those, functions and how to provide those services? So it might just be a shift or a pivot from where they currently exist and still get to do
Well, look, I mean, market makers in the crypto space still have, sex exposure, right? I mean,
Yep.
they have the same risk and maybe worse. And so, talking about a world where they have true self-custody unless and until the market order is filled, that's just a very different thing. In fact, one of the things I enjoyed pointing out to people, because people are often like, why don't you worry about TVL on Chia, or what's the TVL? Why don't you care? And it's like, locking value is the bad idea. The whole idea is that you want to
Let
take
it move
liquidity,
freely.
right? You want the liquidity to sit in your wallet until you're willing to get the offer that you want, and then it's a completed transaction. Like, why would you want to avoid locking capital up as much as possible, right? And so that view from a market maker's perspective is excellent. You're basically saying, hey, look, capital lives in your wallet, and you look at the market, and you don't have to spend capital unless and until somebody hits the bid or the ask.
Yeah. No, that's powerful stuff. I probably have exhausted the questions that I needed to get, off in the conversation, and I don't want to steal all of your time today. We're really grateful to have you here and celebrating the Tang Con.
Yep.
Be on the lookout for the Tang Gang. We're bringing more people every day to come over and get their hands on Chia. Tom Pepe's helping us foods, DJ Waffle, the usual cast of suspects. And
foods. I saw you got rugged on Solana. Just saying.
Yeah, well, I helped him. I went over there. I said, it's not enough to have centralized enemies. We got to go and fund their campaign, or else the Chia network will knock them out of the competition. And then who will we yell at? So exactly. I tried to help fund the bad guys every now and then to keep them in the race. They're always a step behind, but we're having a lot of fun. People are opening up their minds to the technology and seeing. I think even what you mentioned there with the layer one coin is always valuable. People are starting to actually believe that. They're seeing the value when they're using the blockchain technology. So I'm excited to see, where Chia Network is able to take their developments. I love seeing the community developments. And if you have anything for us to look forward to, by all means share. But I think we're just happy to be along for the ride and make our memes,
Yeah, look, I'll just say it this way. By the time that summer rolls around, you're going to have an entirely different vault, infrastructure for self-custody. It's going to be much safer than anything people have seen before. You're going to have real DeFi happening between what Dexy is doing, what TibetSwap is doing. Pulling those two markets together as one is really powerful. And frankly, the biggest handicap has been that, after Stably kind of blew up, there's not been that good pair, but that good pair is here in, under 40 days.
That's incredible.
I think it's going to be a very different environment come June, July.
Very cool. Well, my birthday's in June, so I'm putting it on the docket. Chia's doing everything they can to deliver an awesome birthday present this year. But
perfect.
We appreciate your time, man, and I'll be bothering you on the timeline.
Thanks for everything you do, man.
Of course, we love it. Bullish, can you save us? I don't know if you're still there, man. I can't produce anything. Thanks, Gene. I'll catch you around up there.
Absolutely, man. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I'm back. Just me, guys. Bullish executed the leave me hung out to dry. Yeah, it's awesome that he had the time today, and he doesn't go in very much for the 420 stuff. So I held off because I wanted to be able to actually have my thoughts together for us. But I hope people see, that the game out here is not as siloed as maybe they had once been led to believe. These communities largely drive the user features that you're going to experience while you wait for these institutional developments and things like that to take place. So it's cool to get to talk to somebody who's in the talks with, the White House and with the regulators, and to understand that things are moving, but they're moving slowly. And so what do you do in the meantime, right? I think we could call it the meme time. So I hope people are becoming open-minded to the concept of the technology is valuable. The technology is valuable because of its permissionless and censorship nature. So that layer one coin is a critical feature, whether it's Pulse Chain, using it to get access to the blocks on Pulse Chain, Chia to get access to the blocks on Chia, et cetera, et cetera. And then becoming more interoperable is where you don't have to worry about where you necessarily start your project. There are benefits and setbacks to starting on any given blockchain, but as you become more familiar with some of the opportunity to port your data and to bridge your data or your assets onto these other chains, you can start to grab some of the benefits from their infrastructure. And so I hope people in the Tang Gang are recognizing that there will come a day where you'll see a lot of your familiar market activities that you used to go to a Charles Schwab to get access to happening right on the Chia blockchain, and you get to see it coming. This is such an unprecedented evolution in an industry where even the retailers are every bit as up to speed as the institutions that are trying to adopt the technology. So if you ever feel like, what's the big picture here, you might need to take a step back because you're just so close, you're so in the know that you're expecting developments that'll simply require a lot of time and paperwork and agreements and negotiations. But one day you'll get to that point where it says, "Oh, I remember hearing about that on the Tang Con, and now it's actually becoming real. I thought this was never going to happen." It's just slow. Things just take time. Anyone that's waited for Pulp Chain, waited an extra 2 years against whatever their initial expectation was. So if we're patient and productive in the meantime, I think we're going to have a really fruitful future together. That's my 2 cents. Yeah, thanks for putting this on, man. Awesome. Awesome. Very cool. I'm gonna pop down. I've got an orange elephant, and I've also got an orange utility that I'll be accessing here in honor of 420. So when I pop off, I'll be incorporating the orange glow to my eyes, but I'll be enjoying the production as a viewer. If that's all right. Appreciate y'all.